concentrate on one verse in today's khatira, and it is a verse that we have heard 100 times. The khatibs always mention it, and that is that famous verse, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That Allah does not change the status of a group, a nation, a qawm, until they change what is in each and every one of themselves. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ. The qawm doesn't change until the nafs changes. It's a simple ayah. Now a lot of people don't even look at the context that Allah Azza wa Jal in the same verse begins it by talking about the blessings of Allah and being saved from Allah's punishment. لَهُمْ مُعَقِّبَاتٌ مِّن بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِ يَحْفَظُونَ مِنْ أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. That the righteous people, Allah says, they will have angels behind them and in front of them. لَهُمْ مُعَقِّبَاتٌ مِّن بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِ يَحْفَظُونَهُ. They are protecting him from the command of Allah. Now Ibn Abbas and others, they explain this and they say that we've already said no one can protect you from Allah other than Allah. No one can protect you from Allah other than Allah. So Allah Azza wa Jal says that the righteous people have angels that will protect them by the permission of Allah from the command of Allah. And what this means is that if there is a general punishment, or if there is an accident or any type of musibah, and in the last second a person is saved, this is the angels protecting that person. This is Allah Azza wa Jal's qadr, that he should have died or he should have been harmed, but this person was saved. لَهُ مُعَقِّبَاتٌ مِّن بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِ يَحْفَظُونَ أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. And then Allah says this phrase, that the qawm will not be changed until the nafs changes. And then Allah says, وَإِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِقَوْمٍ سُوءًا فَلَا مَرَدَّ لَهُ. But once Allah intends to destroy or any evil for a group of people, nobody can come between it. The beauty of this verse, it begins by protection of Allah. It ends talking about the punishment of Allah. And right in the middle is this phrase, that Allah does not change the status of a nation until they change what is in themselves. And this verse, we have heard our khatibs and our imams and our scholars emphasize it because it is worthy of emphasis. I want to concentrate on two elements of this verse. Firstly, an element of pragmatism. Secondly, the element of optimism. This verse is a pragmatic and optimistic verse. What do I mean by this? Think about it. If Allah Azza wa Jal had told us that success is based upon changing the nation, if Allah Azza wa Jal had told us that you will be tested and tried based upon community, we would have all failed. But Allah says, I'm not looking at the group, I'm looking at the individual. I'm not looking at the community, I'm looking at what you have done. And so there's an element of pragmatism that you need to do what you are capable of doing. And the world, whatever is happening, Allah is not going to ask you about it. In the face of so much problems in the world, Palestine, Kashmir, Iraq, Guantanamo, the list goes on and on and on. Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, I'm not going to ask you about all of that. You will not be asked about how you changed the global situation. But you will be asked about, did you change yourself? Pragmatic. Our religion does not place a burden on us more than what we can bear. And there's also optimistic in that, and this is the beauty of Islam. Allah does not judge you based upon the material success of your efforts, but rather merely on your efforts. Let me clarify. No company, no boss, no corporation cares about how much effort you put in. They want to see the output. What are the results? Whether it took you 1 minute or a year, all they care about is the success of the results. That's only they're focused on. The only exception is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the result is really and truly not your care. Allah explicitly says to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ وَعَلَيْنَا الْحِسَابُ. Your job is only to convey. Our job is to see what will happen after that. Your job is only to preach. Whatever happens, that's not your business. Whether they accept you, whether they reject you, that's not your business. And this shows us that in our religion, Allah Azza wa Jal is not asking us about what actually happened from the fruits of our da'wah, from the fruits of our religiosity. Suppose we weren't able to change the crises in the world. Suppose we couldn't come to a Palestinian solution. Suppose we couldn't bring peace in the Middle East. You know what? Allah is not going to ask me and you about that, because it's not my job. It's not my capability. But Allah will ask a very simple question. What did you do based upon your talents, your time, your energy, your circle of influence? That is what Allah will ask you. Allah is not going to ask you about things beyond your control. And so this verse is a pragmatic and an optimistic verse. Be realistic. What change can I do? I can change myself. I can bring an influence in my friends and family, in my neighborhood, in my workplace, my circle of influence. This is what I can change. Now, if every one of us did this type of attitude, if every one of us had this type of attitude, we would realize that if all of us worked within our own sphere of influence, then wallahi a lot of change would in fact happen in society. And the example that some of the scholars of the past gave is that of a group of people immersed in darkness. And every one of them started lighting a candle or a flashlight, or in these days we take out our iPhone and put the flash app onto it, right? If all of us, if we were pitched in darkness, if all of us brought a little bit of light, what would happen? The room would become shining bright. But if every one of us said, you know what, the room is too big, my one phone is not going to bring about any light, my one candle will not help the rest of the room, it's too big. If we all thought like this, we would fail ourselves and fail society. And this is exactly what Allah Azza wa Jal is intending, that think of yourself and your family, and when you think of yourself and your family, society will benefit. If every one of us concentrated on the tangibles, what is realistic, what can I change, what is the influence I can have. And the fact of the matter, brothers and sisters, every one of us has a unique role to play for the ummah. Every one of us. Think about it. The talents that you have, forget even talents, the circle of influence you have. Nobody in the world has the same circle of influence. Period. Your circle of influence, your family, friends, your relationships with them are absolutely unique. I have a role to play, you have a role to play. The rich have a role to play, the poor have a role to play. The talented in the media have a role to play. The talented in any field has a role to play. And if every one of us understood, as Allah says in the Quran, that we need one another, that Allah made you differently, that Allah made you with different talents. This is a verse in the Quran, that Allah created you differently so that لِيَتَّخِذَ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا سُخْرِيًّا, that each of you could benefit from the other in what they're doing. And those who attended the interfaith dinner, I gave some examples about this, where I said that we need car mechanics and we need doctors, right? The doctor, no matter how much money and whatnot he has, he still needs people who have different talents and specialities, and vice versa. And Allah in His beauty, in His majesty, He created all of us differently. Such is the ummah. Allah does not change the status of a group until they change what is in themselves. Brothers and sisters, our religion, wallahi, it is a simple religion. It's a beautiful religion. It's a practical religion, pragmatic religion. Do what you can to better yourself. And you know what, even if you don't change the world, even if you don't, and you don't see the effects of that change, at least by changing yourself, you have saved yourself from the punishment of Allah. What better reward do you need? Even if you don't bring about world peace, even if you don't solve this and that problem, simply by being a better person. Be selfish in this regard. What is it for me? Your safety and my safety.
Contract on one verse in today, and it is a verse that we have heard 100 times, always mention it, and that is that famous. It at the famous barriers that Allah does not change the status of a group, a nation. Allah doesn't not change the status of a group, a nation, a unit. They change what is in each a way, every one of themselves that doesn't change until the unexchange. Simple. Now a lot of people don't even look at the contest that Allah is the same variation being it by taking about the blessing of Allah and being safe from Allah's that the right people Allah says the will have angels behind them and in front of them are him from the commanded of Allah. Now I Abbas and others they explain